Good evening, everybody. Y'all doing all right? This is Sirwalterj, and this is Unplugged. And listen, I want to talk about subject matter marriage. The subject of marriage and single will go on until Jesus comes. And we have different dynamics and reasons why we want to and reasons why we do not want to enter into those two situations. You automatically are single before you get married. So you're in that when you're born, you're just in that. But some people don't want to stay in that state of singleness. And to each his own. But yesterday I did a show called Married but Living Single. And let me tell you, that show upset almost every woman that was watching it. And I know why. Hello, everybody. You doing all right? Listen, this is me. It's Unplugged. It's we go live every night around, not live, but you're watching it live. Those of you watching it live, all right? They're pre-recorded, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time every night, Monday through Thursday, actually. But yesterday we were talking about this show, and I was reading the comments, and I was kind of laughing at it. But then my heart went out to the people who were disagreeing with the subject matter, and I knew why, because I did too when I first heard it. Notice my intro. I was talking about how I was talking to a woman whose husband was a member of another church, and I couldn't understand it. I remember going to another church, a different Reformation, different type of denomination, and when the praises went up, nobody said anything. When the preacher was preaching, and no one, when the choir sang, when they got through singing, you didn't hear not one clap, not one amen, no tambourine, nothing. Silence. The church of the chosen frozen. And I thought, this is unusual. These people can't be saved. Why did I come to that conclusion? It's because I come up under a traditional way of having church. The woman whose husband didn't go to her church, I come up under the traditional way of my mother and father belonged to the same church. And so when I noticed that there are people who around the world who were living in different homes, but yet they were happily married, I thought it was odd because I, like you all who disagreed yesterday, come up under a traditional value, which is American. Some of it is European, some of it is Afro-Pean, all right? You come up under it. And this is one reason, or the main reason, why I decided to enroll in Moody Bible Institute and study theology with cultural engagement as a focus. Ministering cross-culturally is this book here that I've realized that I really had the world wrong after taking these classes. I saw people and their cultures in a different light, and it helped me to be a better missionary or evangelist when I'm speaking to people of different races and cultures and creeds. This book here it's called Introducing Cultural Anthropology. All right. This is by Brian M. Howell and Janelle Paris. It's an amazing book. Let me read the contents here. There's 12 chapters. The discipline of anthropology. Chapter 2 is called culture. Chapter 3 is called language. Chapter 4 is social structure and inequality in race, ethnicity, and class, which was probably my favorite chapter. Chapter 5 is sex, gender, and sexuality. That was last night's show. 6 is economy or economics. 7 is authority and power. 8 is kinship and marriage. That was last night's show. 9 was religion and ritual. That was last night's show. 10 was medical anthropology. 11 was theory in cultural anthropology. And 12 was anthropology in action. So I want to focus on chapter 8, kinship and marriage. Very unusual, but the statistics don't lie. There are people who really enjoy themselves when they are away. And they come to this conclusion either before marriage. Y'all like, that doesn't make sense. Why even get married? And then they come to that conclusion during marriage, some of them, which are maybe they're up in their 40s, 50s, or much older, and then they figure they just need to be separate, but they don't want a divorce. And the number is high, 3.89 million Americans. According to the New York Times, there were 3.89 million Americans who live apart from their spouses in 2022, just under 3% of all married couples. The statistics do not include couples intending to divorce, but do include those who are forced to live separately due to military duties and couples therapy and what have you. And others are doing it because they want to. This is called LAT, living separate, living. What's the phrase? It's LAT, living apart. There it is. Living apart together is what it's called. And it is growing at an alarming rate. All right. And so I get it. For many of you who come up under very traditional values, that it doesn't make sense. But here is my pushback towards you. Why would you not want a couple to save their marriage? You see, it's easy to disagree with the content. But notice that I never said that you should do that. I didn't make it a one size fit all. What I was saying is I played that young lady who was interviewed by the bishop, and she said they had been doing that for years. And they're comfortable and trust one another. And if that is what keeps that marriage together, you should agree with that. You should be in a state of agreeing with, if the couple is doing something like that to keep the marriage together, agree with it. Now, Mary, one of the bunkers, brought up a great point. I told her, come sit on the couch. I appreciate Mary, I really do, and I thank her for bringing that up because she brought awareness to something that the other bunkers were like, yeah, I agree with that. Her question was, it wasn't really a question, more like a statement. Then how does the man take charge, lead that is, separate? And that question was a good one. But again, the book, we're looking at it, the American structure. And the man have to be in the house to lead is the American structure. And many structures from around the world as well still go by that traditional value that man's got to be in the house. But what if he is in the military, like this thing said? Or couples therapies or other things where he can't be there. Can he still lead? Absolutely. Because you're looking at a physical lead. It's like the church. You can't find God until you go to church. This is what I thought. You had to go to a physical brick and mortar in order to worship God and find God. Yet God was everywhere. Wherever I was, I can worship God. I can talk to God. So a man can still lead in his home. But because his home is not a physical building. His home is wherever his wife is, because they're no more twain, but they're one. And if my wife is in Czechoslovakia and I'm in America, I can still lead. Now, it would be difficult to protect her. I do say that. But it's difficult to protect a woman when she's at work for 8 hours. It's kind of difficult. So you're saying, well, you can get to her quicker. That's true. But there's some people who actually have to work outside of their territories for several days, and then they come back together at the end of the week. There are people who are married who have jobs that are out of state, and they're gone all weekend, and they can only come home for the weekend. These marriages are working. My subject matter today is marriage is not for everybody. I don't want to push that on nobody, especially if you're not ready for it. So what I want to do is I want to go into the scripture and go to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. And let's see what Paul says here, which is kind of odd. And you all are not talking about this for some reason, but you're disagreeing that marriage, people need to stay in the same house. But some of you are guilty of pushing men or women in an abusive situation because you need the traditional value. But you get mad at the pastor who sends a woman home to an abusive situation. Well, there are some people who can't live together because they just can't physically live together because they can't get along. And through all the counseling, and as a matter of fact, separation was the key for peace, even in my house. Eventually, divorce did happen, but in my other friend, separation was the key. They stayed separated for a long, long time, and they were loving each other. They were falling in love with each other. My own pastor suggested separation, and we did. Now, it gave us the answer that we needed. But here's what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, the 25th verse. Now, regarding your question about the young women who are not yet married, I do not have a command from the Lord for them. But the Lord is, in his mercy has given me wisdom that can be trusted, and I will share it with you. Because of this present crisis, focus on that. I think it is best to remain as you are. If you have a wife, do not seek to end the marriage. If you do not have a wife, do not seek to get married. But if you do get married, it's not a sin. And if a young woman gets married, it is not a sin. However, those who get married at this time will have troubles. And I am trying to spare you those problems. What time was he talking about? Well, there was some persecution going on there. And in some parts of the world, persecution is going on. And so we cannot emphatically say that Paul was just talking about this time and that territory, although he was at that time, as if it wasn't going to happen again. Because Jesus warned them that a time is going to come where it would be a bad idea for you all to be married or have a baby, start having children, or she's pregnant, or that it's snowing, it's wintertime, what have you. He said, run to the hills, run to the rooftops, run somewhere and hide. He said, because it's going to be a horrible time. So the Apostle Paul is saying that is going on at the time he was writing this letter. All right. But that time is going to happen again. And that time is happening in certain parts of the world. It's just not good that you get married. The time is just too troubling. In America, we're better off. I will say that. But that's not the way it's going to be always. So how do we interpret this then? Because when we read the scriptures, especially the New Testament, we always look at it as present tense, present time. This is an instruction to the church. And we have read in the big first part of 1 Corinthians was talking about singles dedicate your lives to the Lord, and married folks dedicate your lives to each other and the things of the world. Well, I've heard that in church a lot, but as we keep reading, they won't read this part, which is wonder, because they're like, I'm confused. It's because they don't ever explain it. Look at this here. But let me say this, dear brothers and sisters, the time that remains is very short. So from now on, those with wives should not focus only on their marriage. Those who weep or who rejoice or buy things should not be absorbed by their weeping or their joy or their possessions. Those who use the things of the world should not become attached to them. For this world, as we know it, soon will pass. This sound like present tense right here, present day. Can't you apply that to present day? I want you to be free from the concerns of this life. An unmarried man can spend his time doing the Lord's work and thinking how he pleased him. But a married man has to think about his earthly responsibility and how to please his wife. That's today. His interests are divided. In the same way, a woman who is no longer married or has never been married can be devoted to the Lord and holy in body and in spirit. But a married woman has to think about her earthly responsibilities and how to please her husband. And today, a lot of the women don't want to do that. And so they're choosing to stay single. Married, that is, living apart, but together. All right? I am saying this for your benefit, not to place restrictions on you. I want you to do whatever will help you serve the Lord. There it is. That's the answer. If these people feel that they're serving the Lord better by living in two separate homes, leave them alone with a few distractions as possible. But if a man thinks that he's treating his fiancée improperly and will inevitably give in to his passion, let him marry her as he wishes. It is not sin. But if he has decided firmly, listen to this, this baffles me. But if he decides But if he has decided firmly not to marry and there is no urgency and he can control his passion, he does well not to marry. So the person who marries his fiancée does well, and the person who doesn't marry does even better. A wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives. If her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone she wishes, but only if he loves the Lord. What? There's your problem right there. But only if he loves the Lord. You all are marrying anybody. That's why you have marital problems. But in my opinion, it would be better for her to stay single. And I think I am giving you counsel from God's Spirit when I say this. So it's not just his opinion. He's saying this comes from the Lord. The Spirit of God is telling y'all to stay single. But in my church, meaning the church at large, is telling us we need to get married. Every time we turn around, singleness was a curse when I was coming up. But today, things are changing just a little bit. More people are not getting married, especially the young people. The millennials ain't trying to get married. All right? So how do we analyze all of this? It's baffling. It's baffling. What do we do with all this? Marriage is not good for everybody, because you already know going in that you are a problem to yourself, which means you're going to be a problem to others. Don't do it. I counsel people out of the idea of marriage more so than I counsel them into the idea of marriage. It may not be for you, which causes you to look at these marital arrangements so differently and weird. And weird. All right. So don't do it. It may not be for you. Counseling is the best thing to do, though. The counselor will walk you through things that you haven't talked about. You haven't even thought. You haven't even fathomed the things. And a good counseling session will help you through that. Unfortunately, brothers, there are women who they're in love with the wedding more so than they are with marriage. If you talk to a typical guy, he's thinking about a lifelong of maybe problems, good times, bad times, finances, struggles, babies. He's thinking about all that. She's in love with being in love. Number two, her immediate focus is on that ceremony. That's why most want a ceremony. They spend a lot of time thinking about it, planning it. Let me tell you, brothers, if you're in the car, this happens a lot. If you're in the car with a woman, and make sure she's a single woman. If you're in the car with a single woman or single women, play a love song, a hit song, and watch the room, the car. You got a woman sitting on here and then two women in the back, and they all single. And you driving, put on a Luther Vandross or put on Angela Bofield. I don't know. Put on somebody who had a hit song, love song. And out of the three women single in that car, either one or all of them are going to say the same thing, because it used to happen to me all the time. I just don't have single women in my car no more. Right? I just don't. All right, but it used to happen to me all the time. And what was the thing that typically they would say when they heard that song? The men already know. They're already in the comment section. They would say, either when I fall in love or on my wedding night or wedding day, I want that song played. It never fails. Brothers, do the test. If you're married, get permission from your wife. Have her in the car with you, all right? Or if y'all are in a room or you get an opportunity to play a love song in a room full of single women, I can guarantee you they are going to say, I want that song played at my wedding. It never fails. Why? Because there's something inside of a woman that she is hooked. Her dream is to walk down the aisle with a gown, with the bridal party, with the church, with the whole tradition. Whether she do it in Vegas whether she goes to the justice of peace, but she typically want a church wedding. Even atheists, many of them want a church, right? Because that is the traditional look of a marriage. Men, not so much. They really don't want all of that. No, but they're thinking honeymoon night. They're thinking, I'm about to do this. It's going to be so good. And then he starts to worry after that. You don't need to talk about that. So the dynamics of relationships and marriage is so different, but depending on the sex. And I think y'all know that by now. So it's good to disagree on things until you open up your eyes and see what other nations are doing. Our culture is not worldwide. It's different because the American bride comes down the aisle and everybody stands up. But in Middle Eastern cultures, no. It's about the groom, not the bride. And when that groom walks in the room or he rides on a horse, everybody's excited. For him, not her. This is what Christians should know, because it's really about Jesus. I shall show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep. We shall be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. Dead in Christ shall rise first, and we who remain will be caught up to meet who? The groom in the air. And forever we shall be with who? The groom, which is the Lord. Watch a Indian wedding or a Jewish wedding on YouTube, and then you'll understand that whole concept. America's culture, it's cute and cuddly. It's a great British culture, but that ain't Bible. So if you're going to live separately or living apart together, and it's going to work for your marriage, and it's going to keep it together, do it. Because those who are living in the same house together as married couples, really, it's a rocky road. Their marriages are horrible examples, and we see it at church. They act like they're together, but they're not. They're not. So while they're pointing a finger at you and saying, that's odd, but y'all living together, how can you? And then check them out. Part 3? We'll do that if you want to. Come sit on the couch, because I know you disagree. Sirwalterj Unplugged.